Good morning. My name is Michael Smith, and it's a pleasure to be in this class with you. I hope that you can learn some great things about the American Revolution. For our discussion board this week, I chose to talk to you about from Mark Knowles' chapter on from his book America's God on Christian Republicanism. His discussion goes a long ways toward understanding religion and its effects on the American Revolution as we understand it. We could spend a great deal of time in this post discussing the disunity of the different settlements that made up the American colonies before the Revolution. In his book, Albion's Seed, Four British Folkways in America, David Hackett Fisher attributes a lot of these differences to the different areas from which English people migrated from different areas of England to settle in the colonies, and that their peculiarities, made for separation. We tend to focus, when we talk about colonial history, we have this myopic view of just the Puritans and think that that was the only folkways that were here. But we also realize that there were settlements in both Chesapeake and Charleston, at least, and those had a very different makeup than did the Puritans at Plymouth. The differences spelled disunity and did not bode well for the coming revolution because there would need to be some consensus in order for that to work. Mark Nolan, the chapter entitled Christian Republicanism, proposes that somewhere between the establishment of the colonies and the war, that Republican and Protestant convictions merged in a unique way that produced theological change from old country beliefs and led to a Christian worldview that embraced liberty and freedom as significant themes that would inspire the American Revolution. Mill proposes that the critical event that brought about this change was the First Great Awakening. And in his chapter on Christian Republicanism, he discusses the role of language and how it was used during the Great Awakening by men like Jonathan Edwards and George Whitefield. While those men stayed within theological lines in their speech, Whitefield, in both his preaching and his praxis, opposed the religious practices of the Anglican Church, and the Church of England and the government worked together hand in hand to pretty much control people's thinking and their actions. We sometimes fail to understand that the Anglican Church had little provision to reach the masses of people. Families in the church owned their own pews. They were locked when they left, and little space was set aside for those they considered to be unelected, and they were largely ignored. So when Whitefield came along and began to carry the gospel into the public square or into the fields, he opened the masses to new ideas about the gospel. But in doing so, he also broke down this barrier between people and government, just like he did with religion. So there was not a significant ideological jump from religious change to political change. So in a very real sense, Whitefield, in his preaching, prepared the way for the coming ideology that would be necessary for the American Revolution to happen. Thomas S. Kidd, in George Whitefield, America's Spiritual Founding Father, supports this same idea of the importance of the First Great Awakening on the American Revolution. Whitefield traveled widely in the colonies, preaching and raising money for his orphanage in Georgia. And not only was he the most traveled man in America or in the colonies, but he was also both well-known and well-liked, with large crowds attending his meeting. Benjamin Franklin, who was Whitefield's friend, actually measured the size of the audiences and predicted that Whitefield could speak to up to 20,000 people in one meeting and be heard very clearly. So you could see, not only even in a day without technology, he had a tremendous rapport with the people and with the gospel, and thousands were converted in his meeting. Whitefield was writing places, or Kidd's writing places Whitefield well within the context of change during the Great Awakening, and as a central figure in both spiritual founding father and as a leader of the future evangelical movement. So ideologically, the Great Awakening prepared the way for the coming American Revolution and thinkings about liberty and republicanism and freedom. and that freedom became intertwined with religion and politics, so that you'll have a very strong emphasis on those things in the preaching after the Great Awakening. Other preachers will take up the mantle, so to speak, that Jonathan Edwards, George Whitefield, and others carried, and the language will change, and you can see that change in, as Noel mentions, you'll see that change in other preachers going forward as different phases of the Great Awakening unfolded past those that had started it. So I hope that as you think about the revolution, you'll also think about the importance that this great religious revival made in the thinking of people, as well as in the future of the coming country that we now call America. Thank you.